Hi guys, this is Yaron Betan, the co-creator of Heroes Manufactured, as well as this new live TV show for Heroes Manufactured. And yeah, we've got a great show lined up today. We've got a couple of great artists, creators, director and producer as well. So we do have lined up today is Adam Prosser and Ben Goldenberg, which will be bringing it on shortly. We also have our Comics Vault corner today that we're going to be showing some new books out there for both artists and written literature that's just great. We also do have a new toys and collectibles segment that we're going to be showcasing some really cool collectible items. So yeah, I'd love for you guys to see what's out there right now. So yeah, to get right started, we're going to introduce you guys to Mr. Adam Prosser. And let me just pull him up here. One sec here. And there he is. Hey, Adam, how's it going there, buddy?
Not too bad, Yaron. How are you?
Great, great, great. So, yeah, I mean, I know you've been doing this stuff for a while now. You've been in the comic scene for quite a few years, from what I recall. And yeah, I mean, if you can, we're gonna get kind of right into the questions here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you've produced a number of books, about 4 books in total now that have been written and published. And you also like, what made you, I guess, get into storytelling, comic book illustration in the first place? Is there anything you can tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I was studying animation, or rather, I was studying. I was gearing up to get into animation at Sheridan College, and I just, which I've always loved animation. It's just I like visual storytelling, but when I got into it, I just it's very competitive, and I did find that. I started to fall in love with comics, which is a similar medium in some ways, but it's just very, it's much more individualistic. I felt like it had a lot of potential. It was very, there was a lot of exciting stuff, and it was a bit more of you could be a bit more of a one-man band, which is, I guess, more to my liking. And with animation, you've got to spend, a day moving someone's arm around. And in comics, you can get a little more quickly to the actual storytelling, which is the part I feel I'm interested in, the actual, the actual narrative. So I did, I launched, when I was still in college, I launched a web comic like about a week before 9/11. Actually,
Wow.
no, I think it actually came out, like I was getting it ready, and then it came out a week after 9/11. So that was auspicious. And then I've just been trying various other things online, and I've been an online indie webcomic writer for a while now, and
Yeah.
writer and artist. And so I just pursued that through stranger and stranger down stranger and stranger pathways.
Nice, nice. And so, are there any specific techniques in writing and sketching, storytelling as well? I mean, that you feel you're influenced from, and if so, like who specifically? I mean, if you can mention a little bit about that.
Well, in terms of people I'm inspired by,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I like I'm for writing. I'm a huge fan of Alan Moore. He's always been the go-to, the classic go-to guy. There's and Grant Morrison, who's kind of his arch nemesis slash follow up. There's both art and story wise. I'm a big fan of Carl Barks. He was the creator of Uncle Scrooge. You probably know all the
yeah,
DuckTales gang. That was when I was a kid. And Dan DeCarlo, I also like a lot. He was not the creator of Archie Comics, but he was the one who's kind of the go-to house style artist for Archie in the 50s. I'm a little less of a superhero comic influence. I started with sort of kids comics, and then I got quickly through superheroes, but I was into sort of the weird indie stuff.
yeah.
I like Jeff Smith a lot too, Bone, and Dave Sims, Cerebus, and I know, he, and
Well, I know you attended something like I think TCAF, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. I mean,
I have been to TCAF. Yeah.
yeah, and I know that that's like a pretty big scene here in Canada. I know there's a lot of artists that come from the U.S., from abroad, from internationally as well, that come out to TCAF. to be a part of that like indie market. I notice a lot of cartoony style things. I mean, it's funny you're saying, you know, weird cartoony kind of characters and comics, but I mean, I find it not weird at all. I think it's fun and it's engaging, and it is childlike. It's got a very like certain innocence to it. Some people really push the edge these days as well. I noticed that in some of your work as well. But yeah, I mean, being a Canadian artist who's involved in that scene, how is that as well?
It's great. I do find like one of the things about comics is that when you do something that's a little cartoonier, that actually opens a lot of doors for what you can do stylistically. Like there's you know, even though it's art, you know, what they call a simpler style is actually in many ways it's more expressive. It's a better way to convey emotion and storytelling sometimes. You know, there's a lot of people who try to do the most realistic style they can, the most you know, I guess naturalistic images, but you actually convey things a lot more clearly when the characters are simple and expressive. Scott McCloud writes, another influence of mine. He writes about it a lot in some of his books about comics. He talks about how, you know, the simpler the character are, the more relatable it is, and the more I find the easier it is to convey what they're thinking, what they're saying, who they are, all that kind of stuff. It can be, and you can do a lot of stuff with like cartoony characters who you know, don't necessarily fit into the paradigm of, oh, it's cute characters. Like you can do some weird stuff. There's stories where they can get a little darker or they can get a little more adult. There are you know, people who do serious action comics, but they have a simpler, more straightforward style. That's one of the interesting things about,
for example, you mentioned Scott McCloud, but he's I know he does those, like a lot of those how-to books as well, right? Like the how to draw books. I've seen a lot of his work there.
Yeah, it's not just how to, but yeah,
I know it's not just how to. I know I've seen some of them before, and I know that like even I mean I've been part of Ty Templeton's school, and it was a great experience for myself. You know, only took one class there, but it was pretty interesting. And he's always kind of been my influence, telling us, you know, in his classes that, you know, really learn how to draw simplistically at first, really understand how to tell a story sequentially well. So, I mean, and that seems along the lines of what you're kind of mentioning as well. In order to tell a good story, you kind of want to know the simplicity of just drawing characters, and cartoony kind of you know, that style allows you to tell the story the way you want to tell it versus having to really worry about the details. But nonetheless, I think some of your drawings are very detailed and beautiful for that.
Well,
that being said, so and I'm sorry to cut you off here, but I have another question I want to kind of bring into play. But if you can tell us a little bit, like give us a few snippets of your stories. I know that you have Strange Romance is one of your books that you've created.
Well, before you do Strange Romance, because that's sort of a separate thing. Just there's Lemuria, which I don't know if you have the images.
Yeah. So we've got some images right here. I believe is sorry. Let me just pull this up here.
So Lemuria is it's a sword and sorcery you know, comedy. Just a number of different characters living in Lemuria was a place like back in the old days. People used to believe that there had been a lost continent called Lemuria, which they used to explain the existence of lemurs on different continents and some other animals. And it got picked up by sort of crackpots and weirdos, and it got compared to sort of Atlantis and places like that. So it's, it's felt like it's a setting. It's even mentioned in things like the Conan the Barbarian comics. But he of course, there's an edge of ridiculousness to it, so I just took that, and I just took just this idea of all these different characters who could live in sort of a fantasy setting, which is kind of the pulp sci-fi comics, like you'd see in the 70s. Marvel, Marvel did Conan the Barbarian comics, but then there were all these like knockoffs of Conan and all that kind of pulpy stuff. Main characters are these two girls, Sorty and Sorcera, who are roaming the countryside, creating havoc.
Nice. And so there's also another book I know you put together called Night Beach. I got the cover here. I mean, there you go. Beautiful artwork. I mean,
yeah, that's by a guy called Dan Butler who did the artwork on that one. I wrote that one.
okay, you wrote this one. Very nice. So it's completely your story from beginning to end. And yeah, tell us a little bit about that as well.
Well, that's just a goof. You know, I'm you know, I'm hoping to do more. There's been some. It's been kind of cool. It's gotten a fair amount of attention, actually, in ways that maybe I can talk about further down the line. But yeah, it's just when I was a kid, there was, you know, of course, we all remember Baywatch. There was a spin-off called Baywatch Nights, where David Hasselhoff became a private eye, and then by the second season, apparently, it became an X-Files ripoff. Not apparently, it did, because they were kind of desperate for ratings and they were kind of trying to figure out anything they could to make it stick. And without having seen the show, I just heard that story and went, oh, okay, that's kind of crazy. So the idea of lifeguards, and they're not lifeguards on the show, but it is sort of tenuously connected to Baywatch. So I kind of went with the idea of just lifeguards that would fight the paranormal. So it's completely ridiculous, obviously, but but that's the gag. It's lifeguards fighting supernatural entities on the beach, basically, at night.
And so there's then it's a great concept. I mean, it's definitely fun. Seems engaging just from the photos I showed there. I mean, definitely looks like something I want to pick up and just have a good read through.
Yeah, well, these are all on phantasmictales.com, as you could probably see.
Yeah, just
from
below
the
there on the scrolling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this book, Star Force Pentacle.
Right.
I know you mentioned. Is this an online book or is this published?
Well, this is a webcomic that I do, and it is going to be on Comixology very shortly. I actually want to sort of launch it full on Webtoon Canvas, although I don't know. By the time you see this, I don't know whether it's going to be what the timeline is going to be. But yeah, this is kind of wild. I wanted this to be sort of out there and available for free for everyone. It's a again, I mentioned Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, who are chaos magicians as well as comic artists, and they had the idea of they just wanted to convey magic with a K ideas through their comics, which I'm I'm not even sure I'm particularly knowledgeable about it, but there are some very interesting ideas that they've tossed around, which is just the idea of making a magic spell as a comic book. In this case, I decided, and Alan Moore did it with superheroes with Promethea. Grant Morrison did it with, I guess, spy and conspiracy stories with the Invisibles. If you know the Invisibles, that's a big inspiration for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But I decided to make it it's a space opera comic. Just on the superficial level, it's about since being able to travel fast in the speed of light and some of the technology you see in a sci-fi comic is essentially magic. I just basically decided, okay, yeah, it is literally magic. If you want to travel fast in the speed of light, you need to get magicians to travel through mind space and go to another portion of the universe or whatever. It's a girl. It's also based on the idea that when Captain Kirk comes down to a planet and basically talks to their computer until it explodes and messes up their society, what he's essentially doing is a magical ritual. I have the main character, Mary Sue Maxwell. She does that on Earth. She basically summons a trio of four other magicians. The number 5 is very important to this book.
Oh, okay.
So she summons a bunch of 5 magicians at first, and they do a ritual to disrupt the internet, which is also God, and sort of free Earth from the current paradigm that it's in. It's a little crazy, obviously.
It feels almost like Hitchhiker's Guide on some level. I mean,
there's a bit of that.
Number 5, the significance of a number in a in a book. I mean, for anyone any lovers of Hitchhiker's Guide, I mean, I'm sure you'll see the parallels there. But I mean, I guess if you can also just share a little bit about like what other stories do you have cooking up? I mean, what can we expect to see from you in the near future? Is there any new books or titles that we can look forward to? Any new projects you're working on?
Yeah, well, I'm actually Star Wars Pentacle is actually just about coming to an end.
Nice.
Next month it should be. Well, I mean the current storyline. You know, I would like to come back and do some more of it later, but I'm going to finish that major arc and then come to the next point like later on. In the meantime, I've got like half a dozen things. I'm actually working on a kid's book, which I might do with my sister, who builds models. So I might do it with models. I'm doing I have an artist, Philip Rice, who's my co-host on a podcast I do called What Mad Universe, and we've been talking about doing another webcomic that would be his art and my writing. I've got, and I also did actually want to talk about, even though we don't have plans to do more in the meantime, Strange Romance, which you mentioned at the beginning.
Yeah.
The reason I sort of put that at the end is just that I'm the editor of that. It's not a personal project. I'm the editor and publisher, but we've got a whole team of different artists and writers involved in it. It's just the hook is sci-fi fantasy stories that are love stories. So love genres, or genre stories with romance in them, or rather romance stories that are sci-fi and fantasy.
Yeah, no, I mean it looks awesome. Just even whether it's the images here. I mean, there was this one image that was just like,
yeah,
wow, it really is awesome. What
yeah,
you guys are doing here, it's fun.
Yeah, and some of these artists. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just seems like you guys are really pushing the envelope with everything here, and I mean, I mean, I admire that. You know what I mean? You gotta have fun. You gotta know how to, raise the bar a little. Pretty cool stuff. But yeah, I mean, thanks for joining us today, Adam.
Well, thanks for having me, Yaron.
Yeah, and I mean, stay tuned, guys. We do have another guest coming up. So I'll say bye for now, Adam.
Bye, Yaron.
And take care. Stay safe now with this whole pandemic.
Yes, we're all inside. But just a reminder, check out my stuff at phantasmictales.com. You can see everything that I just talked about, and you can buy Phantasmic Tales and online. They're all in Comixology as well. So
perfect. All right, guys. So that brings us to an end with Adam, but we do have another guest coming up. His name is Ben Goldenberg. He's worked on a series of books called Silverpool. He'll tell you a little bit more about that. So let's introduce Ben here. Hey, Ben, how's it going? Oh, no, he's on mute. There he is. Sorry, I can hear you now.
I was saying I'm sorry I couldn't get a haircut before the show. I've been in isolation, so.
Oh, he's in
to deal with my like tiger training looking style.
Yeah. You definitely look like that tiger fellow from the Netflix series. But I love the Goonies shirt, by the way. I have to say that's awesome.
This is my dress suit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so I see that big title right behind you in green screen, I guess. Silverpool. That looks awesome.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if you can tell us a little bit about kind of what you've been up to. I mean, first tell us a little bit about yourself professionally as a filmmaker, a writer. I know you've been involved in the comics scene, at least on the writing end with me. I mean,
right.
You've been kind of working on stuff for years, but tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think we have enough time for me to go over my eclectic past too much, but my background is in film. Been an indie kind of guerrilla filmmaker for years. I produced 2 features, and I got really into screenwriting and storytelling after years of being a cinematographer and director, and that became my true passion. And one of my screenwriter friends, she's a master's degree from USC, and she wrote some amazing screenplays, never went anywhere. She ended up publishing a book, and it got published. That was she wrote the first book she wrote was in Indigo, and I went and picked one up, and it was autographed by her. And I said, you know what? I write all these screenplays, and the only people that read it are my film buddies, right? So I said, you know what? Maybe I'll adapt something I care about to a novel. And I had this script. It was not called The Silverpool at the time. It was a much sillier script, but it was a cool concept, big science fiction movie that I knew was never going to get made with the budget it would need. And so I said, you know what? If I'm going to write a novel, I can make as many explosions and starships and aliens and whatever that I want, because it's all just what my crazy mind can come up with. And with hair like this, you can imagine I have.
Yeah. So I mean, Silverpool is the series, but then the first book is called The Orphans.
Orphans of the Silverpool. Yeah. Each one has like a little title. So the first one's Orphans. The second one's The Currency of Judgment. Okay. And the third one is that I'm working on right now. It's a working title, but I'm thinking of Roses and Warships.
Okay, that's yeah.
Idea of Roses and Starships, but I like not making it seem too science fiction-y for people to read who aren't necessarily into that.
Okay.
And anyway, so I wrote these books as for credit for a dissertation for my degree. The professor read some of my short stories, and she said, "Oh, you seem like you've written before." I said, "Yeah, I've been writing screenplays for 10 years, and now I wanted to learn prose, and I wanted to learn how to write, novels and whatnot." And she said, "How many more credits do you have for your degree?" I said, 3. She goes, "Okay, you can write your novel." But so I ended up writing Breaking because it was a big novel. She wasn't she's actually a published writer herself, and she writes like Canadiana. They're much shorter. So I was pitching an 800-page space opera, and so I broke it into 2. And the first, like for her, but I had a trilogy in mind, or a much bigger.
So yeah, I'm going to show a couple of quick images here, just from what
Sure,
we
yeah.
Well, I mean that's the original title face there. You had Orphans of Silverpool.
Yeah, and each book has a different title. So the first one was more playful because it starts off when they're kids, and then it gets darker and darker. It's sort of like Harry Potter.
Yeah, and this here's a concept. I know that.
Yeah, concept for the original cover.
Yeah, and I know you had some of the characters in there placed in, which was nice. I know some of the work that you did also for this book was based off of an actor that you've worked with in other film productions.
Well, yeah, because of my background in film, I have some connections to some celebrities. This is my friend Lyric Bent. He's
the guy just in the middle there, right?
Yeah, you might recognize him. He was in Saw, not Saw 1, but in the Book of Negroes. He was he's been in a ton of stuff recently. He was the star of the last Tyler Perry movie. He was in he's been in a ton of stuff. So anyhow, his manager is a good friend of mine, and he said, "Yeah, you can use his likeness on the cover." So I thought it'd be kind of cool, get some celebrities on the cover, and he's one of a few that we'd been talking to. And I'm saying we, like I have an office and there's more people. On my green screen, I can duplicate it's just me. I've been talking to getting their likeness rights because I thought it'd be kind of cool. And we could do like a guerrilla marketing campaign, and people will see it and be like, "Oh, I know that guy. Cool. That book must," because most people don't market books unless you're I was going to say Kevin Spacey, Tom Clancy, or Michael Crichton. The big ones they put on billboards, but no one else. So I thought if I did a little guerrilla marketing campaign, it might get some traction.
No, it's perfect. It's perfect. Yeah. Now, can you share a little bit about the series as well? I mean, if you can tell us, just give us a little bit of a snippet on the story without ruining it, of course. But just an idea of what the world's like that you're creating here.
Right. So actually, Adam already explained in the last interview what my book was about, because it turns out his last comic is almost exactly the same concept. So it's not as high concept as I originally thought. In fact, last year I was watching an episode of Rick and Morty, the one where he makes a battery and he has people inside the battery in a small culture powering the battery. If you've seen the episode, it's a genius. It's just I remember watching it going, well, Rick and Morty just did a 20-minute episode that told my 5,000-page epic in 20 minutes. It's not exactly the same, but
the similarities of story.
Yeah, anyhow, but in general, I made this book for fans of Harry Potter and other pop culture. I'm a huge pop culture geek, as you can see. There's everything in there: video games, movies, extra cult stuff. So kids who grew up watching Harry Potter want something more. And so it's more for adults, but who grew up on Harry Potter. So like The Magicians, actually, if you've seen the show or read the book, Lev Grossman, fantastic. Anyhow, it's like that, but it's because I love big sweeping epics, like big popcorn tales. It's more of like Star Wars meets Harry Potter. So like all my favorite fun popcorn things in one, but it's got some really cool high concept sci-fi stuff. And the big thing, yes, is the magic in technology, because Arthur C. Clarke originally said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that line inspired me. Now, obviously, it's inspired other people, and the concept is not. I mean, it's out there, but the way I do it, I think, is kind of cool, and there's like a big Matrix homage, but it's very original at the same time. So I think if you read it, you'll enjoy it.
And if you were to tell us, like in a nutshell, about the plot, I know you have some characters there. One named Titha.
Yeah. So basically, the protagonist, her name is Titha, and that's one renditioning of her that we were working with. And basically, the book starts off with her being a child. They're on this far-off planet called Tarantulan, and it's run by the Church of Magic. And basically, the Church of Magic controls everything, and everyone believes what they say because they have magic. They have wands, they have powers, but those wands are might be technology. I don't want to ruin too much, but I think it's fairly obvious if you read it. Yeah, so if you can see, this is some concept art for the cover that we ended up going with. The middle hand will be holding a wand, and the wand, the artist was supposed to make it white. It's supposed to look like an iPad. It's going to be like a glossy white wand because it's supposed to be tech. And the idea is that's a little different, is that the religious authority has the secrets of magic, so they're able to control people. Because with us, being an atheist on Earth or an agnostic, you can say, yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't believe in it. But what if your priest or your rabbi or your imam could come out and cause a burning bush to happen right in front of you? You'd be like, oh, okay. What do you want me to do? Not eat pork? Whatever. Like, I'm eating matzah right now for Passover, based on what some dude did.
Happy Passover, by the way.
Pardon?
Happy Passover, by the way.
Oh yes, happy Passover to you too. This is a weird one.
Happy Easter to Adam and everyone else out there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it's all about that, but it becomes a sweeping epic tale that and I was very, very inspired by the Golden Compass, his Dark Materials, which is nice because they just re-released the show. But the structure is a lot like that. So my first book follows Titha. The second book does too, because I broke it up for school. But originally it was going to be two big books, like a yin and a yang. The first one's Titha. The second one is another protagonist that I don't want to tell anything about, but it's a completely different world, and I kind of bring it together. So it touches on a lot of things, a lot of pop culture that you like.
No, it looks awesome. I mean, even this one image I just showed a moment ago. I mean, that's you actually worked on that.
I made the one in the middle in Cinema 4D.
Wow, yes. I mean,
the art
background in animation as well, I believe, in 3D.
Yeah. I went to Centennial for a bit, mostly because I wanted to learn VFX for my own movies. But I have a small background. I don't consider myself to be a real artist in that.
Artist. I mean, you have a good background understanding.
Yeah, I went to school for art. I know how to draw and whatnot. But yeah, so anyways, and then you would talk to me. You said when you read the first book, you haven't read the second one yet, which you have to read because
no, I know. I definitely
says it's way better than the first one.
Yeah.
So you said, hey, this reads like a graphic novel. This would be sick.
Oh, for sure.
And I said, well, I'm a screenwriter. Storytelling is storytelling. And I was talking to you earlier. I got into storytelling because I discovered the book Story by Robert McKee years ago. I mean, I've read 100 books on storytelling now. But that book inspired, when I went to the Robert McKee seminar, he's teaching about screenwriting. And he said, this seminar is called Story. It's not called Screenplay. The book may be called Screenplay. No, it's called Story. But like, I'm teaching storytelling, the same stuff that Plato or Socrates wrote in the Poetics 3,000 years ago.
And by the way, sorry to cut you off, but I do want to mention that to any writers out there, especially, I mean, tons of comic book artists that are writers as well. Definitely a must-read book. I'll bring it onto the show next time. But Robert McKee's Story really sets you up to understand, how to essentially create a story from the beginning, right? The originating.
Yeah, and I've read 100 books on screenwriting. None of them are quite as technical or difficult to read. I mean, his book is difficult to read, like in parts. Some parts I had to read over and over and over. And I'm an English major, like it was, to get it. But it set the basis for my storytelling career and love of structure. And so anyway, so when he was there, he said, who here is a screenwriter? Like a dozen people put up their hand, 100 people put up their hand. He said, who here is writing something else? And about 100 women put up their hands. And he said, well, you guys all seem like you're together. What do you do? And they were all Harlequin novelists.
Yeah.
And he said, good for you. Because the truth is, just because you're writing a Harlequin novel, there's no reason it can't be bad.
Of course.
Surprisingly, 50 Shades of Grey, which is probably a terrible Harlequin novel, was written by someone who knew nothing about story structure. That's the most successful one, which shows you that marketing is sometimes more important than the actual quality of the product. But I'd actually probably read some of their Harlequin stories if it's based on McKee, because then it's good story structure with the juicy stuff on the side. But so anyways, when you said comic book, it's because I structured it like a movie. And movies and comic books, I remember about maybe 15 years ago now, I said to my buddy, I wanted to make a short film based on a comic to get a fan base. And we had talked about doing Why the Last Man. I was going to do like a 10-minute short based on like an episode. And one of the ones I wanted to do was The Walking Dead. I remember I was telling him about it. I was going to do the first issue. He's like, yeah, where are we going to get a horse? The zombies. I'm like, yeah, we got a horse for my first movie. You get a donate. It's a horse, we'll CGI it, whatever. And he's like, nah. And this guy's a producer now. So then he said to me last year, we were at a party and he said, if you ever have a script or a book, give it to me. because I know you're a visionary because you knew about Walking Dead years before me.
Years before, yeah. Oh no, I remember you talking
I
about
don't know
stuff
about
like
that. I was looking at popular comic books that I thought were manageable to produce. Why the Last Man, a
Yeah,
girl.
I mean, even if you look at Walking Dead today, I mean, it's. I mean, I've watched every season of that. I've read the
Sure.
book. It's
Yeah.
still pretty. They have scenes that are very high budget.
Yeah, but you
on
can
day-to-day,
do it.
it's mostly dialogue and
Right.
conversation.
And that's the thing with a few of my VFX buddies, we could have done one shot at the end with the horse, whatever. But
Yeah.
that's the production value. But and my friends did the Call of Duty one, like
Yeah,
guys.
I remember I worked with you on that actually.
Right, and someone else I worked with before just did the one for Nathan Drake or whatever. It's Uncharted. I think.
Oh yeah, I know. I heard they're doing that.
Doing it.
Tom Holland plus possibly is Drake. I don't know if I'm I could be completely wrong on that.
Tom Holland. What,
Yeah,
the
I read something about that, so I could have read the wrong article.
Well, the guys that I know got Nathan Fillion to do it.
Yeah, they were talking about that.
No, he was in it. He was in the short that my friends did, and Nathan Fillion is Nathan Drake. I mean, like, look,
he's perfect, right? Like,
like when I see Nathan Fillion, I feel like the little girl from Big Mouth.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm really into Nathan Fillion.
No, for sure. So listen, thanks for coming out today. I appreciate that. We do have one more segment today, guys.
Just let everyone know they can if they want to read a copy of the book. If they email me at the silverpoolbook@gmail.com, I'll send a.
And actually, and I do apologize, but we do have the banner for you guys.
Adam Prosser was getting all this. There you go.
There you go. Silverpool. If you guys want to check it out.
Yeah. So while we're still doing the art, we're still in the process of getting the cover art. I'll send out alpha drafts. Working drafts like the video games on Steam that aren't complete. It's pretty complete though.
Yeah, no, it's awesome having you on here, Ben.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
First off, again, stay safe, you and your family during this time. Yeah. We hope to invite you both back here sometime in the near future. But if you guys do need to check out Ben, check out the silverpoolbook@gmail.com. Or he's also going to be posting it on our Facebook group. So
sure, yeah.
You guys check out the Facebook group. A lot of great artists, writers, talented creators on our show.
And any artists that read it that might want to collaborate, we're definitely.
Yeah, you were mentioning that you're looking also to work potentially with other collaborators.
Yeah, because I think, as you said the story's worth telling. And so that would be pretty amazing.
No, for sure. All right, Ben. Well, listen, take care there, and we'll be in touch shortly. For now, we are going to get into our next segment, and that is right here, the Comics Vault. So, guys, this week we're going to cover a couple of quick books here. This is a book called Counterfeit Girl. I like to mention this. It's a book, you can actually pick this up. It's a rare one, but I've seen it at Indigo sometimes here in Canada, Chapters. There's also a bunch of indie comic shops that hold this. If you guys liked Altered Carbon, it's got kind of a similar feel to it. If you guys know Altered Carbon, now the Netflix show and series, but it is actually based off of a Dark Horse comic book. But yeah, Counterfeit Girl, great novel here, a great little not novel, but graphic novel here. I'll just show you some visuals here as well. Get a nice little feel of that. Very edgy, very out there. It's definitely got a little bit about that futuristic, ID stealing, that sort of element to the story that Altered Carbon had. That's why I like to recommend it. It's created by Peter Milligan, Rufus Deglow, and Dom Regan. So great book there. Another great read. It's more so a collection of art by James Stocco. It's called Grunt. You can take a look here. That's what the cover is. He's got some original work here, but also the art of James Stocco. Great read. I'd love for you guys to check it out. It's actually also distributed by and published by Dark Horse. For some indie work here, if you guys know R.B. White, this is a book of his artwork. That's actually the cover. The back looks like a front cover, but definitely some great artwork in here as well if you're into the indie art of R.B. White. He does a lot of pinups, but a lot of really cool concept drawings as well. I believe he's modeled these characters off of people that he knows. I believe even some family members, believe it or not. But yeah, very edgy, very cool, futuristic work out there. Definitely recommend it. A couple of other ones that I'm a big fan of is Humberto Ramos. You guys can check out his work. He's got some great art books here. This is, I believe, volume 2. I've also got volume 1 here. So definitely check those out. If you're into Humberto Ramos, he works on The Amazing Spider-Man, a lot of the Marvel DC stuff. I've always loved his books. Personally, just his sketches are great. They're kind of on the edge of cartoony, yet very, it's got a mix of comic book superhero style, as well as very cartoony and edgy in that sense. For our next segment, just a quick showing here. We're going to show you some collectibles and toys that you guys should definitely check out. This is a company called D Stage. They create some really cool, edgy Marvel universe stuff. I think they even done some Disney toys and concepts. That's a Wolverine there by D Stage. We also have a nice little Doctor Strange here. You can tell that's the company right there, D Stage. Great collectibles. They're pretty affordable. They're about like $30 on average, between 25 to $30. So yeah, I mean, I definitely, I check this stuff out. Check out the artists we had today, Adam Prosser, as well as Ben Goldenberg. They've done some great stuff, and looking forward to having you guys in upcoming shows. Next week, we are going to have a couple of guests lined up as well. Maybe one, we're not sure yet, but definitely Shane Kirschenblatt. He's going to be on the show, so want to mention that and give him a little shout out. Thanks for joining us again, guys, and we'll see you next week. Take care.